Over the last 5 years, there has been some real progress towards ending sexual violence. No longer is it simply assumed to be an unavoidable consequence of conflict. There is some real growing international consensus that this crime against humanity, must be stopped, and yes, it can be stopped. And I'm proud of the UK's leadership on this important issue. Today, I wanted to talk about 3 things: working together, tackling stigma, and the training of our armed forces. The first point is really a thank you. Thank you to all the NGOs, civil society representatives, to UN agencies and governments across the world that have worked together collaboratively, collectively for the last 5 years. Your collaboration is one of the reasons that Preventing Sexual Violence in Conflict initiative has made such good progress. Your knowledge, expertise and advice has shaped our approach and enabled us collectively to design more effective policies. The development of the International Protocol on Documentation and Investigation of Sexual Violence in Conflict is one good example. More than 200 partners contributed to this guidance on how to support victims and, importantly, bring perpetrators to justice. Earlier this year, we published the 2nd edition, with new material on children born of rape, men and boys, trauma and analysing evidence. It is a valuable resource, and it could not have happened without the support of all our partners. My second point is about tackling stigma, the stigma associated with sexual violence. We know that it prolongs suffering, it prevents reconciliation. Survivors have told us it's like a social scar that remains long after the physical act. Over the past 14 months, we have held workshops around the world to identify the causes and effects of stigma, all around the world, in different countries and different communities. These workshops drew on the knowledge and experience of those who were directly impacted and affected. And it's through using this evidence, and again, in collaboration with over 120 experts from academia to civil society to governments and, yes, the important UN agencies, that we have developed the principles for global action. Its purpose is to help policymakers and others working to end sexual violence decide the right approach to tackling stigma in whatever country they may be in. The principles are globally owned. It's a globally owned resource, and I was proud to launch them in New York alongside the United Nations Secretary General's Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict. And I urge you all to promote them widely. They are for everyone to use. My final point to conclude is about the importance of training our armed forces about sexual violence. Our armed forces do an incredible job. But military personnel and police from around the world carry this valuable work out on peacekeeping missions in fragile and conflict-affected states. They are ultimately responsible for the protection of some of the most vulnerable people in society. It is therefore vital they are properly trained for this challenging task. And crucially, this training must cover how to respond and, importantly, prevent sexual violence in conflict. In this regard, yes, I am proud of the United Kingdom's military work in this area. Since last November, all UK troops deploying overseas have received specific training on sexual violence in conflict, women, peace and security, as well as tackling wider gender issues. And we are also committed to help to train others. Our British support teams in Eastern and Southern Africa are already training peacekeepers, deploying to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Somalia, focused on sexual and gender-based violence. We are also training the Kurdish, Peshmerga and students at the Ethiopian Peace Support Training Center on these vital issues. We are convinced that training peacekeepers and service personnel is an essential step on the road to ending sexual violence, and therefore would urge all governments to give it their key focus and priority. To conclude, the United Kingdom, let me assure you, remains absolutely committed to ending sexual violence in conflict and the stigma it causes. Let us together continue to work on this important initiative, build on the progress of the last 5 years, and end this criminal act wherever it takes place, wherever in the world for good.